So this is the Unity Hub. Hopefully you've all seen it before, since that was part of the homework. And these are the projects that you worked on. And they appear on the projects folder. If you do not know if you have the right version installed, and you want to make sure that you're using either the 2019 or 2019.1 or 2018.3 versions, you have to click on the install button and you can check it out here. So it looks like I have both versions installed, and I can look at these little icons in the bottom, and these tells you what are the platforms that you can develop with this Unity install. If you're planning to make apps for the Oculus Go, because it is a untethered device, you have to have the Android installer as well. If you don't have these versions installed, or if you want to make sure you have Apple support or Android support, you have to click on Add, then you select the version you want to install, and then on the modules, you'll be able to select Android or Mac in it. I already have installed, so I'm not going to do it right now. Once you've gone through this page, you can go to the projects window, and when you create a new project, you're going to have the options to build in all the Unity versions that you have installed. So let's create a 2019.1 app. Even though we have something called a VR Lightweight RP here, I'm going to recommend you start with a 3D project. So welcome to Unity, and as you can see, there's nothing in this game that we just created. You may have a completely different look once you open Unity for the first time. And these are because the windows are all flexible. So you may not have the inspector to the right or the hierarchy, and you're always able to drag things around if you need them to be in different places. But if you are missing a window, you can always go to the window button, and then under general, you're going to have nearly all your important tabs. So my recommendation is to always have a project window open, a hierarchy, which is where all the objects in your game and your scene are going to appear, an inspector, which will give you information about every single game object, and a console nearby. Now, we didn't get to talk about this in class, but a console is where errors appear. Not only errors, but also some information that a script may trigger. So even though this is the errors window, I don't want you to freak out if you see anything in here. As long as your game is playing, it is totally okay to have errors appear in your window. And if a red error appears and your game stops working when it comes up, then you can always read it, and it's going to give you really good information about it. So now that we have an empty game, let's add VR to it. So the first thing you need to do is go to Edit and then Project Settings, and this window is going to appear. Under the Player tab, you're going to be able to put your company name, your app name. You can choose an icon if you want to have an icon. And here you're going to have to check the virtual reality supported. So here I have the Oculus and the OpenVR tabs open. If you don't see any of these, you can always click on the plus and then select it. What this essentially does is it bridges the communication between your virtual reality headset and Unity. So once you click this, if I add a plane to a scene, and let me center the camera in a better place. Here we go. Now if I play this game and I move my headset, you can see that it's following it. Or you have to trust me that I'm moving my headset, but I am. So now that you have a VR game, you're going to want to add more attributes to it. The best way to do it is to start with an SDK. So to do so, you have to click on the Asset Store, and then you can search for SteamVR or the Oculus Integration Toolkit, and you click on it, and it's going to give you a description of what's contained in this file. Right now, let's install SteamVR. Because I already downloaded it, I just have to click import, but you may see a different button there. Don't frighten. So I'm going to click in all and import it. Okay, now we're getting a window. And as most things in the development process, once you're asked something, you can normally click accept all, unless it's asking you to update something. That's the only case you're probably going to want to avoid doing that. But now that you click that, you can click OK. So now, in our project window, we have a new folder called SteamVR. And this folder is full of little jams. So on the search button, you can search for player. And if you see this icon, this is called a prefab. And a prefab is just a game object that has predetermined information on the inspector window. So I'm going to drag this to my scene, right in the middle. And I'm going to delete my main camera. And now if you hit play, you are going to get a message. And this is asking if you've generated the inputs. And what that means is it's going to automatically generate and map all the buttons on your headset to scripts on your Unity project. So you're going to click yes, and then yes, and save and generate. Press the play again. And now, if I move my headset, it moves with you. And you now have hands that you can use. And the beautiful thing about SteamVR is that it will know what controllers you're using. In the moment, I'm using the Oculus Rift, and it's already going to animate your buttons as you move your fingers around the game. And that's very, very cool. Okay, so now you have a SteamVR game, but it's very boring. There's nothing to do in it. But I've prepared something. So I'm going to delete the plane that I've just created. And I'm going to my assets folder, and I'm going to import a package. So I have here something called a basketball court, and I'm going to import it all. Okay, so now that we've imported the assets that I created earlier, I will go to the prefabs folder and drop a basketball scene into it. Okay, so what I've just imported is a collection of cubes that I created before. And if you've seen the tutorial that was homework for last class assignment, you should be able to create cubes, assign materials to it, and move them around to create a scene just like this. The only exception is that I also created a text that you can just create by going to 3D object and 3D text. And I position it on top of this basketball basket? I don't know. So now that you have a scene and a camera, if you click play and you move your headset around, you should be able to look at that scene that you just created, which is great. That's exactly what you want to happen. So how do we teleport around the scene? Well, we have to first add a teleporter prefab to your hierarchy. So I'm going to go to the search over here and type teleport. And I'm going to drag the teleporting prefab into my hierarchy. So all this is the controller of your teleporter. And if you click on it and then look at the inspector, you'll be able to see a bunch of information that you can control and change. You can change the sounds that are in here so that you have a different teleporting experience. And I'm also going to take a chance to take a look at the player prefab that we imported earlier. If you open the player, the parent player, you can see a bunch of little other game objects in it, including one called follow head, and if you collapse this one, you're going to see a left and right hand anchors. What those are game objects that will follow your hand's position. So if you want to change your hand, all you can do is you click in them, uncheck this box, and then whatever object that you attached inside of this one, so I can create a little cube here, and if I move it inside the right hand and change this to better position, 0, 0, 0, and make it smaller. As long as it's inside of my right hand and I turn off this, now when I click play, if I move my right hand, the cube will be following it. instead of the actual hand model. So this is a good way that you can change your hand and get information of where your hand is in the game by looking at this game object here. The Oculus SDK have something that's very similar. I think they're called left and right hand anchors. And this is a standard in toolkits for virtual reality to have little game objects that will be tracked according to what your headset sees. So now we have a teleporting script. We're going to need to add teleporting zones. And the really cool thing about SteamVR is that it actually gives you the ability to create these little zones that you can lock where you teleport to. So I'm going to create one right here, and this is going to be a teleporting zone that you go to, but it's a very small area. So when I go to the game and I click on teleport, it's only going to let me teleport into that little circle that I just created. Hopefully that makes sense, but once you're playing with it, it should be a little more clear what this does. So, but I don't want to just be able to do this. I want to be able to walk around the court and walk around the table. So I'm going to create 2 planes that I can teleport to. So now I have to create the teleporting area. And the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to create a plane. And I'm going to position the plane where I want the player to be able to teleport. So I'm going to make it very close to where the actual floor is. And I'm going to resize it to the area that I want the player to teleport to. And now I have to add a component to this game object. So components are the attributes of a game object. And in here, you're going to be able to see that every game object has something called a transform, which is its position in the world. Then some of them have a mesh. In this case, this is a plane mesh, which is a mesh that only has one side. Some of them have mesh renders, which allows you to see the object. And in this case, there's also a mesh collider, which informs the unity of the geometry of the surface of the object. And now it also has a material, but now we want to add a teleportable component, which is a script that came on our SteamVR SDK that we can just click on and then search for teleport. And you're going to find the teleport area. Once I add this component, this is going to change the behavior of this plane so that it becomes a teleportable plane. So I already have one here. I'm just going to Control-C and Control-V to copy and paste it and move it around the scene. So I'm going to move it over here. I don't want people to be able to go through the table, so an easy way to do that is to simply move it to the edge of here. And now you have a teleportable scene. So let's play our game and test it. So, okay, now I have my VR headset on, and when I click the middle button, it's going to allow me to teleport to anywhere in the game. Let me play around with it. So here is the other object that limits where I can teleport to, and I can also teleport by the table. Okay, hopefully you could see that. So now that we have a teleportable game, we want to add some interactions to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is organize the house a little bit. I have created empty game objects that you can nest things into. So I'm going to create an empty game object and I'm going to call this teleport. And in here, I'm going to put everything that is related to teleport by just dragging inside of that game object. And here. So now if I close this window, my hierarchy is not going to get too cluttered with game objects. And as long as you've created an empty game object as the top one, instead of nesting inside of a different game object, everything should be fine. So now let's create intractable objects. So let's create a sphere that you can throw at the basketball. And I'm going to go to 3D object and sphere. And I'm going to reset its position so I can find it more easily. And then I'm going to move it around using the gizmos and shrink it and put it on top of the table. Now, as it is, this game object only has a transform, a mesh render, a mesh, and a sphere collider. but I want it to have physics and to be interactable. So the easiest way to do this right now is to just go to Add Component and click on Interactable. What this is going to do, it's going to look through the Steam SDK package, and it's going to add a component, which in this case is a script, that is going to allow you to change how you can interact with the sphere. Right now, this is only saying that you can interact with it, but you're not really saying what you can do with it. So now let's add a different component that's called throwable, which is going to determine that you can throw the cube. So now that we've created a game object and made it interactable and made it throwable, you can go into your game. And let's see here. There it is. You can teleport near it. Here we go. And you can grab your object and you can throw it around. Now you have a Unity VR game that allows you to throw a ball, and if you know how basketball works, you're going to try to throw the ball into the basket. If you want to add more interactions, I've created a little script that you can import into your game that will let you do more fun things to it. Now, in class, you couldn't really see what I was doing, so I didn't go into this, but I highly recommend you follow along if you have your Unity open right now, because this is going to make your game a lot more fun. So right now I'm going to go to Assets, and I'm going to import a package, a custom package. And all you have to do is browse through a file called Easy Interactions version 2, which you should be able to download from Stellar. And once you're in it, you only have to click All and then Import. And this is going to import 2 game objects and a script that is attached to this game objects. So what this is called a trigger zone. And trigger zones are game objects that do not have mesh renders. So they're objects that you cannot see, but that often have colliders and some sort of mechanic to it. And what that means is trigger zones are objects that once a different object touches it or goes through it, some sort of interaction or mechanic happens. So let me show what that means. I'm going to grab the Easy Interaction game object into the scene. And as you can see, this is a cube, but that does not have a mesh render. But it does have a mesh collider and the Easy Interaction script that I wrote for you guys. And in this script, you can see a bunch of English words that you're supposed to be able to understand, and that lets you control the behavior of this trigger zone. So the way this works is this. Once a different object, so when the object below, and it's an object that you're going to drag in this box, or an object that has a tag that you're going to specify, and I'm going to explain what tags are soon, then something is going to happen to another object. So you're going to be able to define here, make a sound or change color or make appear to an object that you're also going to drag here. So this is a mechanic. A mechanic is just a behavior that happens in your game. So the reason why I brought a mechanic here is so that when I throw the ball into the basket, something happens. So the first thing I'm going to do is position the trigger zone inside of the basket. And I can do so by, I like going to the top and positioning the basket kind of like this and going sideways so I can find exactly where is the middle of it and then resize it so that it's inside of the hoop. There you go. So, whoop, I lost it. Here it is. So now what I need to specify is once this ball enters this collider or goes through this hoop, this is going to happen to a different object. So to make it easier to find the objects and drag them into the plugin, you can lock the inspector so that it doesn't move as you click into different objects. You can do that by clicking here. So now that I've clicked here, I can find my ball here, my sphere, and drag it to the object. So now when this sphere goes through this hoop, something is going to happen to something. And what I wanted to do is make the whole basket disappear. So I'm going to go into this basket, find it, and somewhere in here is the game object for this basket. And as you can see, I created a bunch of little boxes and I've nested them all into one big basket. So I can move this around and all the other game objects, all the other cubes are going to move with it. I'm going to reset its position and I'm going to drag this entire game object to this object field. Now, all I need to do is select the behavior. So I want to make this disappear. I'm going to click here. And what that means is once this ball touches this collider, this is going to disappear. So what are tags? Tags are the other ways we can specify an object. Suppose that I have a bunch of balls and I want them all to trigger the same behavior. The problem is I can only select one game object at a time in the script. So, and all these game objects have different names. This one's called sphere, but this one's called sphere 1, sphere 2, sphere 3. So a good way to go around this is to create a tag. And a tag is simply a name that you attach to multiple game objects. You're going to want to uncheck if you had locked the lock. And to add a tag, you're going to click on the tag and add tag. And here you can create the name of a tag that you want to attach to your object. So here I'm going to create a ball tag and maybe also a red ball tag. And now if I go back to these balls and I can select them all at once by clicking Shift and I can assign the ball tag to them. So if I go back to the collider, to the trigger zone, all I need to do now is type the name of my tag. And now every time an object that has this name collides with this collider from the trigger zone, this is going to happen. Now, since we have 3 baskets, why don't we give different behaviors for it? So I'm going to copy this game object, which is the trigger zone, and I'm going to paste it and move it to the next basket. And on these, in this basket, I'm going to keep the ball here. So every sphere that has the ball tag is going to interact with the trigger zone. But this one, I want to make the text score appear once the ball goes through the hoop. So, and maybe even play a sound. So I'm going to, once again, lock the inspector so that it doesn't move around as I found my other objects. And I'm going to find the text object. Here it is. And I'm going to drag to the changed object. And instead of make disappear, I'm going to make it appear. And also I'm going to check on make sound and select the sound. And I've prepared a little sound that you can just drag into the audio clip. You can also click on this little circle here and choose it from your assets page. And since we're here, why don't we add another easy interaction for the red basket? And I'm going to drag it to the next one. And I'm going to remember to delock the inspector, and I'm going to lock it again on this game object. And I'm going to make the color of the board change once the ball goes through it. So I'm going to deselect the make sound and choose none on the actual sound. I am going to deselect make appear, and I'm going to change the color to pink or magenta in this case. Now I'm going to find the board game object by clicking here, and I can find it and drag it to the to change. But now I only want the red balls that goes through here, and I'm going to color some balls so that they're red to add this interaction. So now I'm gonna write red ball in the tag name, and remember this is the tag that we set up earlier. So let me close this bracket, and let's add now some red spheres. I'm gonna shift select all these ones and Control C and Control V it. And I'm going to change the tag for all these new game objects that we created to the red ball tag. And under my materials, I've prepared a red material, that I'm going to drag to all of these views. Okay, so we should be ready and already have a little game. Okay, so if I go into my game, I find my hands, I can teleport to the ball area, grab a ball, and test it. Oop. And as you can see, once the ball goes through the hoop, it changes the color of the board. Now let's test the blue court. And as you can see, once the ball goes through it, it disappears. And now I'm gonna actually test it from the place, the teleporting zone that we set up earlier. Whoop! Hold on. Luis is awesome. And there you go. This is your first game. However, how do you play this game? Does that mean that every time you want to play this game, you have to open Unity? No. Now your final step is to build the game. And what that means is the Unity is going to compile every object that you have used in the scene, and it's going to create an executable file that you can just open in your computer, and if you have a VR headset on, it's already going to play it. So the way to do this is go to File and Build Settings. And on Build Settings, you're going to select the platform you want the game to work on. For virtual reality, you're probably going to want to go to Windows. Most of them don't support Mac yet, but if you're creating something for the Oculus Quest, for instance, you're going to want to switch the platform to Android. But once we select Mac, Linux, and Standalone, all you need to do is add the scene that you created for into the scene in the build settings. I can do that by add the open scene. And now that we have a scene here, all we need to do is click build or build and run and select a place to build our game. So I'm going to go to Unity and I'm going to create a folder called build. Select this folder and Unity is automatically going to start creating the scene. And now that this is done, you have a file on your computer that you saved your game to, that is going to have a bunch of files and an executable file. For your homework assignment, I want you to select all of these files, all of the files that your build is going to create, and zip them. And this is what is going to be what you're going to upload to Stellar. Or if you don't want to go through the trouble of doing that, you can meet me at the lab in one of the hours that I'm going to email you that you can go to, and all you need to do is show me the game that you made. You don't have to do a basketball game. In fact, I think it would be awesome if you came up with something different. I hope this makes sense. I hope that this help you guys go through your homework assignments. Please feel free to email me if you have any other questions and if you're still having trouble with Unity. And have fun creating your apps.